Show. I've said it before, I'll say it again. When the big news breaks, it breaks right here with me, Patrick Christie's on GB News Live. What do you make of all of that? Loads to get stuck into. Dewbs and co. Michelle Dewberry will be up next for a rip-roaring hour. I will see you tomorrow when, I think, live on air, we're going to be getting the cabinet revolving door announced. Who'll be in, who'll be out? We'll have to wait and see. I'll see you at 3.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into the things that have got you talking. And let's be honest, the main thing that's got us talking today is the fact that the UK is on its 3rd Prime Minister in less than 2 months. Goodness gracious me, where do you stand on this? Rishi Sunak, of course, is the man in charge. Are you a Tory party member? Did you vote against him, what, I don't know, a few weeks ago? I've lost count now. How do you feel tonight? Regardless, how do you feel anyway about Rishi Sunak? Is he the man for you? And moving on from that, the former Governor of the Bank of England, Lord King, has said that it's, I quote, time to front up about what he calls a slipping in our national standards of living. So let me ask you this tonight. Do you think it's time to, quite frankly, accept that the old days are gone and that perhaps we had it too good for too long? Is it time now to accept that things simply have changed? Make do and mend. Do you remember all of that? Is it time for that to come back? And there's no denying that drug addiction can be an absolute scourge on our society. But what is the answer to it? That's what I want to ask you tonight. We'll have it all to come, but first, let's bring ourselves up to date, shall we, with the latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. Good evening to you. You're with GB News and our top story this evening. Newly elected Conservative leader Rishi Sunak says he is humbled and honoured to become the UK's next Prime Minister. The applause there as he was greeted by Tory MPs arriving at the Conservative Party headquarters earlier on, where he spoke for the first time since becoming leader. He won the contest after Penny Mordaunt withdrew her candidacy. In his statement, Mr Sunak warned the UK faces a profound economic challenge and said his priority would be to bring the party and the country together.
It is the greatest privilege of my life to be able to serve the party I love and give back to the country I owe so much to. The United Kingdom is a great country, but there is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together.
But Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, accused Rishi Sunak of not having a mandate or saying a single word about how he'll run the country.
Everybody who I've spoken to, the public have said we should be having a general election. There is no mandate now. The Conservatives have completely broken their promises, broke our economy, and now they want to see a general election. They can't just keep doling out prime ministers every month because they're in total chaos and they've lost control of the market and haven't got any ideas of how they're going to tackle the cost of living that people are facing.
Well, in other news, more than 70,000 staff members across 150 universities in the UK have voted to go on strike in a dispute over pay and conditions. The Universities and Colleges Employers Association proposed a pay increase of between 3 and 9% in May, but the union wants the figure to take into account the cost of living as well. UCU General Secretary Joe Grady says the current terms on offer won't be accepted.
We will not stand by any longer and see our sector be a punchbag for cuts, right-wing attacks and political point scoring. Our members are crucial workers in communities up and down the UK, and now they know their power.
Meanwhile, over 15,000 ambulance workers across 11 trusts in England and Wales have begun voting on taking industrial action themselves. Members of the GMB union are being balloted over the coming weeks. If they vote yes, the union says it would be the biggest ambulance strike in 30 years. And Royal Mail workers will return to the picket line on Tuesday, protesting outside sorting and delivery offices across the UK. The Communication Workers Union says more strikes are planned in the coming weeks if efforts to reach a pay deal fail. BT, Openreach employees and 999 call handlers walked off the job today over a similar dispute, with the CWU again demanding a proper pay rise that's in line with inflation. And as you've been hearing, 4 people have been arrested after a waxwork of King Charles was targeted by Just Stop Oil activists. The Madame Tussauds figure was smeared with chocolate cake. The protesters quoting the late Queen on climate, saying the time for words has moved to the time for action. The demonstration comes a few weeks ahead of COP27 in Egypt, which the King has declared he won't be attending. You are up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News, where now it's time to go back to Michelle and Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, I'm with you right through until 7 o'clock tonight. Keeping me company here in the studio is my panel. Alex Dean is an author, political consultant and member of the Conservative Party. And we've brought back from Kent with us, former Lib Dem advisor and political commentator, Joe Phillips.
Hello.
Welcome. We've lost our audience tonight. And the bar.
I'm sure they're there.
And the bar. Yes. Oh, yeah, I don't mean we've lost the audience, well, I hope we've not, actually.
I didn't know the bar was an option.
Yes, we had, didn't we? We had a nice bar behind us in Kent, in Deal, we were actually, on the evening that Liz Truss had resigned her premiership. What a lot changes, doesn't it, in 24 hours? Got a new Prime Minister now. Rishi Sunak, I want your thoughts on all of that. You can get in touch with me the usual ways. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet me at gbnews. Many of you, by the way, have already been in touch. Elise, I think that's how you say your name. You say unbelievable. This is all a disgraceful day for democracy. Alan, all these Labour voters keep going on about Sunak's family wealth. Why? What about Starmer's wealth? What about anyone's wealth? I'm pondering that tonight. Does it matter? Are you someone today that's kind of looking at how rich Rishi or his wife is, and do you have a problem with that? I mean, I've got to be honest with you, I absolutely couldn't care less about how someone is wealthy or not, quite frankly. I prefer that they, if they're going to be in business at least, that they are wealthy. It would indicate to me that they know what they're doing. But you tell me, What do you think? Because as I'm saying, after, you know, what feels like weeks now, months, some might say, of all these silly games, some might say, we have our new Prime Minister. Boris Johnson pulled out. I want to get into that tonight. Do you think he was right to have, well, I say withdrawn his kind of nomination, but I don't even think it was official in the first place. But do you think it was right that he disappeared from that competition? Penny Mordaunt as well, dropping out. What does it all mean for the future of this country? I'll tell you someone that might know the answer. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, joins us live. Good evening, Darren. One of the things that struck me today, Darren, from Rishi Sunak's first speech as our Prime Minister, it was all about unity, togetherness. Is he the man to bring us all together?
Well, frankly, at the moment, the Conservative Party really do not have any choice, given the fact that he is, the third leader in the space of 2 months. In the end, it was a coronation for Rishi Sunak, given the fact that Penny Mordaunt didn't have enough MPs to get her over that threshold of 100 a little earlier. You're right in noting that very, very short speech that was more than slightly wooden, Rishi Sunak did talk about the fact that he wants to not just unite the party, but also the country too. And given the fact, as you guys have been pointing out, he's got no personal mandate of his own, that is going to be a pretty difficult task. No one voted for him outside of this place behind me, and he's got some very, very tough and difficult decisions to make, eye-watering decisions. I think the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt branded them. First of all, he's going to have to decide who is going to be in his cabinet. He's talking about trying to bring in all different branches of the Conservative Party, and that would include people who did not want him to be leader, including Boris Johnson supporters, people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, for example, James Cleverly too. And then he's going to have to make those tough economic decisions about departmental spending. Which departments could see quite significant cuts in the years to come? Could taxes also rise? And how is he going to get the economy back on track? And when is this all going to start? Well, it's not going to be today, I can tell you, as the sun has set here in London and the rain has begun. It's going to come tomorrow. It seems that Liz Truss is going to have her final cabinet meeting tomorrow morning. At that point, she will travel to Buckingham Palace to see the King, tender her resignation, and then Rishi Sunak will accept an invitation from King Charles to form a government and will address the nation outside Downing Street. The party is hoping and they got a pretty solid speech, I think, from inside Parliament today, that Rishi will be able to calm things. He seems to have calmed the market to a degree. Can he calm the politics within the party? That is the big question. And also, can he get through what is going to be an immensely difficult period? We talked, didn't we, Michelle, 7 weeks ago about Liz Truss facing one of the toughest in-trays of any Prime Minister in a generation. Frankly, she's left behind one of the toughest in-trays of any Prime Minister, I think, this side of the Second World War.
Fascinating stuff. Darren McCaffrey, thank you for your insight. I'll leave you now to head back into the rain. I have to say, Alex, a lot of people are messaging me. I asked the question at the start of the programme, are you a member? Did you vote against Rishi Sunak? Of course, Rishi was the choice of the MPs, of course, not the members. Lots of people are writing in tonight saying that they are Tory party members. They did vote against Rishi and they're appalled today.
Well, look, I am a member of the party. I don't particularly feel like I voted against Sunak. I felt I voted for Truss. But they may amount to the same thing because, of course, the person I voted for is out on her rear in under 2 months. And there is a certain, especially if you don't get to vote in the next process, there can be a certain amount of resentment that builds up from that, and people think to themselves, why am I a member of this movement? I actually think that they probably did the right thing. I think it would have been chaos to try to have another campaign in the country, even a foreshortened one. I think it makes sense, especially if the result is as lopsided as this. I mean, Mordaunt couldn't get anywhere near the 100 votes that were required, so it made sense to go to this process. I'm sad about what's happened to Liz Truss. I'm sad about...
That was Rishi interrupting you there.
With perfect timing. The Prime Minister and I are on song on this. I thought that she never got a chance. I thought she never got a chance to get out of the blocks, and most people believe in a fair opportunity and to give people an opportunity to get going, and I frankly think she never did. But then again, you'll recall, I was the last Japanese soldier on his jungle island fighting the fight and saying that Boris Johnson shouldn't go. So, you know, maybe I'm just old-fashioned and traditional, and we should be burning through Prime Ministers at a rate of knots now.
Well, I'm going to come back to you on that Boris point, because in a second I just want your view on whether or not Boris was right to have withdrawn. I've had a few jokes about Boris today and it's making me chuckle, so I'm picking my words carefully on that one.
All right.
It's tea time,
Do
so I won't
share.
indulge. I will in the break, I can't do it over tea time, over the airwaves. Joe Phillips, where do you stand on Rishi, our new Prime Minister?
I think he is probably the best bet for now. He's made it very clear, as Darren was just saying, you know, unite or we are doomed, to his Conservative colleagues. I think it would have been an absolute disaster to go out to the members again, albeit a very truncated campaign. As someone who has no say in this, I feel deeply disgruntled that I haven't got a say in who is the Prime Minister, and I do think there should be a general election. And what would be absolutely amazing, but I'm sure it won't happen, is if Rishi Sunak said, OK, there's not going to be a general election right now, but there will be one in the spring. Meanwhile, I want to work with the opposition parties to get us through this very difficult winter.
Do you want a unity government?
Well, I think we are in such a crisis financially that you could do that, and it would be quite a smart move, because you're then calling on the opposition parties to work with you in the interests of the country, and you promise that there will be a general election in the spring, which might make people who think the Tories are full of basket cases, who are just going to keep fighting wars over Brexit that really need to be put to bed, and we need to get on with the future. And people might think, oh, actually, they're quite sensible. I mean, I think what we need to see now, and actually Alex and I were just talking about it outside, you know, who is going to be in his cabinet? And I think that's going to set the tone very much of, you know, is it going to be just loyalists, which is the mistake that Liz Truss made? Is it going to be a broad church? Is it going to be competence? Because that's what we have lacked for such a long time. We've had mates, but we've had staggering incompetence.
So I do, and I agree with a bit of what Joe said about Sunak now needing to build unity, but that's going to be bigger than any one person. The Tory party in Parliament has displayed an almost complete breakdown of discipline. It's ruined 3 Prime Ministers in a row, and with no offence to the Labour Party, who are doing their best to oppose, the biggest threat to any Tory PM are the people supposedly on their side, rather than anyone else in the House. That's what they've got to fix, and that's a bigger job than for Sunak. But what I disagree with Joe is this. She had an answer to you just now, which began by saying that democracy wasn't properly recognised by changing Prime Ministers, and ending by saying that we should basically have a government of national unity or reaching across the House in some way, which would, to me, would be a complete rebuttal of democracy, because we voted in 2019 in a general election to have a Conservative majority.
In a non-presidential system.
In a parliamentary democracy. And for heaven's sake, if one Prime Minister can't get the job done, then another one should, rather than saying, do you know what, to hell with how you voted last time. Even if you voted against the Labour Party, you voted for the Tories, we're going to govern with them. That would be the ultimate refutation of democracy for me.
But you know, to get rid of one Prime Minister is one thing. We're now on our third. Well, exactly. You know, and you could quite sensibly, and many people have argued that there is no difference between Tony Blair handing over to Gordon Brown or Theresa May taking over from David Cameron. But the fact that we have gone through this utter shambles.
Yeah.
And
I want to be fair, Joe. The last time we were on 2 months ago, you said it wouldn't work out with Liz Truss, and we both said you were being unfair, and it seems you were right.
Well, but I mean, the other problem, and I imagine, and you will know far better, Alex, that the Conservative Party will do a lot of soul-searching, because that leadership campaign, and we spoke about this during it, and it seems like years ago now.
And went on for years.
But it went on right through the summer, as, you know, the economic storm clouds were building. And I think that's what has accentuated the sense that people feel as though they have been deprived of any right to have a say.
Well, she governed for less time than the contest that produced her victory. Yeah. And that's naturally going to lead to frustration. But I will never have a contest like that again.
No, it's ridiculous. But, I mean, if they were even contemplating electronic voting, given the concerns that have been raised by security experts, one would assume that they will now allow trade unions to use that for their votes.
Yeah, well, I voted electronically last time.
So
let's talk about Boris. Do you think that he was right to withdraw from the competition?
It's a bit like the government U-turns over their much maligned mini-budget, where the government didn't change their position because they thought suddenly that they were wrong. They changed their position because they realised they didn't have the support to get their policy through the House. And Boris Johnson, I think, you can look at his statement in 10 different ways, but it's quite honest, actually, when he says now is not the time, because he means he didn't have the support.
But do you reckon he had 100 plus?
I do.
No.
I think he had enough backers, but I don't think... I think, you know, he was clear that he had a majority of members of Parliament against him. Consider this. We could have had a situation where, for the second time, Sunak won the vote amongst members of Parliament and then lost among the members. Yeah. It would have been really bad to have that happen twice in a row. And so I do rather respect Boris Johnson, actually, for that, because whatever else people think of him, he's still really popular in my party. He would have won in the membership.
Well, by the way, you say that. Sorry, Joe, just before I bring you back in, you say that he was really popular. I don't know if you remember this.
I was just about to say that.
Oh, go on then,
you say it.
Well, on Thursday, we had the pleasure of being in front of the studio audience in Deal, as we were just saying, and I asked that audience, who wants Boris back? Put your hands up. And I was really surprised how few people...
Oh, really?
Really,
I mean,
really
we were all
surprised.
absolutely astonished.
What would you say about 2 people, maybe three people?
But, I mean, you know, it was the fingers of one hand, and I expected it to go whoosh.
Yeah, so did I.
No, I mean, it's really surprising, actually.
Let me read out this little quote for you all. No, it's not a joke. I'll keep the jokes for my break time because I'm not very good at pre-watershed jokes. Listen to this. When a regime has been in power too long, when it's fatally exhausted the patience of the people, and when oblivion finally beckons, I'm afraid that across the world you can rely on the leaders of that regime to act solely in the interests of self-preservation and not in the interests of the electorate. Do you know who said that?
I don't.
Do you know who said that?
No.
Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, was said by Boris Johnson in 2011.
Oh, in the Telegraph.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
I have to say, I mean, we'll never know. But I don't think he got anywhere near the numbers. I think, you know, I have to ask, what do his constituents, maybe there's somebody watching from his constituency, you know, Parliament's sitting, he's been on holiday for 2 weeks, so he hasn't been bothering to even do his day job as an MP.
Can I just say why I completely understand why you have that niggling doubt about the veracity of it.
Mainly because of Boris Johnson?
Well, but so here's my thing. Nigel Adams, one of his biggest supporters, gave a statement today saying that he had checked with Bob Blackman, who's one of the co-secretaries of the 1922 committee, to verify that Boris had the numbers on their paperwork, and it was agreed. Now, actually, that's so high risk, because if that's not true, that's the end of 2 careers. I just don't believe they lie about it. There's not, and that's not Boris now. That's 2 other people.
But what do you think to his own words that I've just read out to you a few years ago?
Well, he's changed his mind. I mean, he's a far better journalist than he is a politician. He's a great campaigner. He's a great showman. And as you know, was written in some of the Sunday papers. Actually, I think it was Fraser Nelson that wrote yesterday in the Telegraph. You know, he had 2 terms as London mayor. He did it well.
He did.
But part of the reason he did it well is because he did the showmanship stuff and he had a fantastic team around him. And
to mop up the details.
Well,
but Eddie Lister and co were grown up around him.
And this is the thing that comes back to the cabinet and why it's so crucial. You know, if you're going to have a figurehead who's going to go out and hang on a zip wire or go to Ukraine and talk to Zelensky or whatever, or go and do the rubber chicken circuit to raise funds for the Tory party, that's one thing. But you've got to make sure that the people who are doing the job
do it well,
are on it. And Boris is just not up to it.
Well, 2 predictions. He'll do something, right? He'll be special representative to Ukraine, or we might try him for the NATO role or something.
Good Lord.
No, I'm serious. But he will do... He made the Ukraine... Special representative for the UK to Ukraine would be warmly welcomed by Zelensky.
Yes, I'm sure. And that's what happened to my old boss, Paddy Ashton, who was actually made special representative to Bosnia.
But the second thing is the political environment is littered with the corpses of people who've written off, metaphorical corpses of people who've written off Boris Johnson. He'll be back at some point.
But he'll make a lot of money, Alex. I mean, he's going to make a lot of money on the speaking circuit. Somebody estimated it could be £5 million a year. He's got £115,000 for life coming in to pay him as an ex-Prime Minister. I do hope Liz Truss...
But hang on, I thought that 115 grand, I thought that was more for, like, costs associated with the job. I didn't think it's because this is being made out 115 grand. All these ex-prime ministers that get it as a salary. It's not.
It's to have an office, but it doesn't stipulate that you have to be doing. I mean,
but it's not a salary that he gets for life, for like sitting on his bottom on beaches, is it? He's got a. It's to me the way I understand it.
I don't think it is, Michelle. I mean, I'm sure somebody will tell us, somebody who may know better. But I think when you get paid work, that has to be reflected. But I think the basic thing is that you get that money.
Yeah, but I don't think it is. Someone in my ear is going to tell me the answer to this, and we'll come back with the details of facts. Yeah, but my understanding of it is, and someone will tell me, it's not like a salary, because a lot's been made of this. You're going to get this money.
Too,
it's not a salary. It's more like costs associated with. To me, I see it as almost some form of expenses. But I'll get clarification. Joe was saying about a general election in the spring.
Yeah. No chance. And
no chance it won't happen, or no chance it shouldn't happen?
Well, there is no chance that it will happen for obvious reasons. The Conservative Party would do extremely badly. Now, I believe that it will do better than it would do if it was held tomorrow. Right? One of the virtues and benefits that Sunak or whoever was going to win this contest was going to have was they had a bit of time, right? Because they had 2 years left on Boris Johnson's majority clock. Now, that majority has been worn down a little bit in numbers as well as it has in time, but it's still got 70-plus seats, which, if you believe the polls are anything like accurate at the moment, would not be reflected in an election. And so, as it's back in the gift of a government to decide when an election is, we had a Fixed Term Parliament Act. It failed each time. We never had an election run to the term of the Fixed Parliament Act before it was junked. It's back in the gift of government, and a government would be completely foolish to call an election sooner than it had to in these circumstances. So it won't.
Mm-hmm. Do you want a general election at home, by the way? Are you sitting here thinking this is all a shambles, quite frankly? We've got to start again. Are you in that camp? Also, what did you think to Rishi's performance today? Because one of my viewers has written in saying that wasn't a speech. I mean, he says it was more akin to a hostage video. I mean, I don't know if you saw it. It was very, very peculiar. Rishi's...
It was very short. I mean, I think, I haven't seen it enough to really have an opinion on it. He's not a great performer, but frankly, I don't want a great performer. We need somebody competent, sensible, who understands finances, who can get the party united, because he's absolutely right. And it is not I, for many reasons, loathe so much that the Conservatives have done under Boris Johnson and David Cameron. But I actually think that, we need a robust and healthy parliamentary democracy. All the time people bang on about Ukraine, including Boris Johnson.
It's a pretty important issue, Jo.
No, but those people are fighting for their democracy.
Yeah.
That is at the heart of it.
One of the reasons we should support them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And my concern is that when we regard democracy so carelessly, which is not always at the fault of politicians, but what bothers me is that people go, oh, they're all the same, I'm not going to vote.
I don't understand how we're dismissing democracy and treating it carelessly, to quote you back, because this is the process being followed the way that the process is established to be. Yeah. If your party was in was in government tomorrow, and you had the misfortune of losing your Prime Minister for whatever reason... but no. If you had the misfortune of losing your Prime Minister for whatever reason, you would follow pretty much, not identical, but pretty much very similar. When Vince Cable came into power, there was no member vote there because it wasn't contested, so you have the same process.
No, I'm not arguing with the fact that people are following process, but I don't think the process is very good. And I think in these circumstances, we need to, perhaps have a think about it. And I think, but what bothers me, and my real concern, is that if people cannot see a way to make their voice heard through the ballot box, how else?
So let me ask you this very quickly, because I'm getting told off. I've got to move on to my break. But let me just ask you this: if you feel like it's such a wrong process, why wouldn't you now be lobbying, say, for example, the Lib Dems to change their process now while they're out of office, so that if they got into office, they wouldn't have this same situation? Because this is one of the things that, it doesn't really wash with me. All these people in opposition parties are calling this situation anti-democratic, while indeed having the exact same process in their own party. So if they was in power, you'd have exactly the same situation.
Well, it may well be that those conversations are taking place right now.
It's the least worst system. We don't have a presidential system. But the thing that drives me to despair, and I hope we can get past this, comments like, Sunak didn't speak very well today, says somebody. Well, let's call Andrew Bridgen and have a vote of no confidence. We've got to let people have an opportunity now. Now is the time. We all need a decent Prime Minister, for heaven's sake. Let's give this man a chance.
And I wasn't criticising him.
No.
I mean, my point was we don't need another showman. We need somebody competent. Frankly, I don't care whether he addresses the cameras or not. But I do want him to, sort out the finances, and I'd quite like to see levelling up come back on the agenda.
Indeed.
That was part of the manifesto.
That was a very good point that Joe raises there. Is this one of the problems that we've had a showman? People trying to be a bit too showy? Is that one of the things that's got us into this mess? Because they've been very showy but lacking substance, perhaps. Is it now time, to echo Joe's point there, that what we need now is more the substance and not the style, perhaps? Tell me your thoughts on all of that. Suffice to say, though, many of you are livid today, many of the members that have been getting in touch with me anyway, saying that you really do feel aggrieved today. Some of you saying that you want a refund of your members' fee. I don't think well, try it. Let me know. I was just about to say good luck with that, but who knows these days?
Who are these?
Bill.
Conservative Party members?
Yeah. Bill is saying, I just want to say that the Sunak premiership will be a disaster. To Alex's point, though, Bill, give him an opportunity, give him a chance, because ultimately, whatever we all think, all of us actually need this premiership to work, because surely the successful working of this premiership means the successful position of this country. I need to go to a break, but before I do so, I'm just going to tell you this sentence, because I love it. I love saying this sentence. It doesn't happen often, but guess what? I was right. That point that we was just discussing then about this, about this £115,000 a year, just to be absolutely clear, because I did say I would clear this up before we went off. It is for expenses that they incur while fulfilling public duties associated with being a former minister. But it is not correct to describe this as a salary or a pension, etc., or to say simply that former Prime Ministers simply get this money.
Where's your source?
Oh, full fact. There you go, full fact.
OK.
Like I said, doesn't happen often, that sentence saying I was right, but I'll down out on that. I'm going to record that bit and clip it up. Right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to ask you a simple question. Do you think it is time to accept that our standard of living in this country simply has to lower? Is that an honest reflection of where we are? Tell me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, We're
on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, right through with you until 7 o'clock tonight, and keeping me company in the studio, Alex Dean, the author, political consultant and member of the Conservative Party, and also the former Lib Dem advisor and political commentator, Joe Phillips. So welcome back, everybody. I'm on the hunt, by the way. Are you a Tory party member that's happy with Rishi Sunak? I want to find you. I don't mean you, Alex.
Nope.
I want to find you. If you're out there, get in touch, because lots of you are getting in touch and telling me that you're members and you're unhappy at the selection. Well, it's not really a selection, is it? You didn't get a choice, and that is what you're unhappy about tonight. But if you're happy with it and you're absolutely fine, get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email address. Now, let's talk, shall we, about standards of living, because we hear this sentence, don't we, the cost of living crisis. You know, that sentence gets repeated all the time. But what about our standard of living? The reason I'm asking you this is because the former Bank of England Governor, Mervyn King, says that the government needs to be honest, that national standards of living are going to fall. He's also gone on to predict austerity, which will be even worse than after the financial crisis. So I've got a few questions here. I'll start with you, Joe. The themes I want to explore in this is, are we having to accept now that life has moved on? We've had it too good for too long. And also, do we need to return to an almost like make, do and mend type culture? So pick the first one. You know, do we need to be honest now? Life's changed?
We certainly do need to be honest. We need to be honest with each other. Government needs to be honest with the public. And we need to be realistic, because we have had cheap money for a long, long time, which has meant that people who have been in a position to buy stuff or, you know, buy property or whatever have been able to. There is no doubt that inflation is running away with itself and wages are not keeping up with that. And there is no doubt that people at the bottom end of society are really, really struggling, you know, because of the increase in costs. There's also the huge disparity across the country between, you know, house prices, rent prices and so on in London and the South East, transport costs, all of those sort of things. So I think Mervyn King is absolutely right to call for honesty. And I think we need to be a little bit more financially literate, because I think we just stop because we go, oh, it's a bit too hard, I don't understand it, I don't know what a government bond is, oh, I don't know what more, you know. And I think we all need to take a bit of responsibility. So, you know, to say we're going backwards, I don't think is right. Perhaps we are becoming much more sensible, and perhaps we are becoming more considerate. I mean, the number of times that people say, oh, I can't afford such and such, and then you point out to them that they're spending £200 a month, 50 quid a week, on coffees and buns every morning or sandwiches or something. People have lost, and it's going to sound rather old-fashioned, this, but they've lost the understanding of the value of money. And I think part of it is sort of cashless stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, you go and buy a coffee and a bun and I'll have that thing of water and stuff. You know, and whatever happened to making your own sandwiches? Little things like that, for instance. So I think, and I think people are beginning to think, and have been for a little while, about, you know, cheap fast fashion. You know, what's its real cost? Cheap food, well, you know, if it's cheap, there's a reason it's cheap. And I think, I mean, I was at a conference some time ago, and it was about food poverty, and I did make the point that actually porridge was extremely nutritious and very cheap. And the woman who I was sitting next to at this, who was a senior, extremely well-paid executive with a local authority, said, that's a terribly middle-class concept, isn't it? And I thought, no, this is where it's all gone completely
What's middle class about saying that porridge is cheap?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, you know, it doesn't do us any harm to think about, we don't need to throw things away. Maybe we can mend them. Maybe we can fix them. Maybe we don't always need new stuff.
And by the way, can you even sew? I'm always fascinated by this, because I actually think most people nowadays, you can't, if I gave you a needle and some cotton, you'd look at me daft. Maybe I'm wrong.
I can.
Where do you start?
I can.
Can you say, oh, well done, yeah.
But I was a Cub Scout. I don't know if they still do that, but anyway, when you're in the Cubs, they made you sew.
And then their mums have to sew on the badges.
Yeah, well, look, I don't pretend that if I can get away with somebody else doing it, so I won't do that. But I can if I need to sew something. Anyway, I hesitate to disagree with someone who I think is one of our very few genuine public intellectuals.
Me?
Mervyn King. But I think I agree with you, Joe, on disagreeing with him. I get there via a different route. First of all, I note, of course, that the cheap money that Joe was rightly pointing to, best exemplified by quantitative easing, otherwise known as printing money, happened on Mervyn King's watch at the Bank of England. Now, you might say that was all correct and we had to save the economy and so forth. Some might say we should have shown a great deal more robustness with our errant bankers. We might have let Northern Rock go to the wall and it would have stopped some of the rot. We could have really had accountability in the banking sector instead of just bailing them out. But whatever you think of it, QE was at the door of the great Lord King. So that's my first point. My second is, and I watched on a rival channel of yours when he came out with this announcement that he thought we needed to make do with less. And it was predicated on the Russia-Ukraine situation having changed the paradigm with energy prices. I'm afraid that's an increasingly antiquated view because the market is... the gas prices have tumbled since the government made the announcement about, OK, there's been some spikes since, but the gas prices...
It's still higher than where it was.
It's still higher than where it was, but the direction of travel is clear, that the market is finding other routes, whether it be other countries producing more, whether it be us being more imaginative about how we extract energy, whether it be people not taking power plants offline, the Germans keeping their nuclear power plants online and so forth, getting more LNG from elsewhere. My point being that technology and market solutions and for the time being, more extraction as well as more renewables will find us a way to get past even something as significant as Russia's appalling actions in Ukraine. And even something as significant as that should not let us say, because it's really the language of the just stop oil type people, make do with less, accept less, take less, and for the first generation, be worse off than, in many years, be worse off than those who came before you. That's not something to aspire to. That's not even something to settle for. We should always completely oppose the idea that people should just accept being worse off. It's not true.
It's not true, but it's the case, unfortunately. And one of the things that jumps out to me, Joe, is that I think there's... I'm trying to think how to word this nicely. There's a lack of honesty and integrity, actually, from a lot of politicians about why we're in this situation that we're in.
Yes.
Because this isn't an accident. This isn't coincidence that all of these things are happening. These are the direct consequences of proactive political choice.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
for example, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's irrelevant. It's a political choice to have engaged ourselves the way that we have with this war in Ukraine. It's a political choice to have responded to COVID the way that we did by throwing money around left, right and centre and closing down the absolute entire economy as though the only thing that mattered in this country was COVID. These are political choices that have consequences.
But it goes back further than that, as Alex was saying. I mean, it goes back to quantitative easing, it goes back to the bankers' crash, it goes back to bailing out things. It goes, right to the heart of our obsession with property ownership. All of those things. It goes back to the fact that we have not invested in the education that allows people who don't go to university to learn trades, to become skilled. So we've been dependent on foreign labour and we've got people who are lagging behind, which is why I say, I look forward to seeing if levelling up, which was in the 2019 manifesto, comes back into this. And I don't think it's about settling for less. And I absolutely agree with you because, I would not for 1 minute say to people, no, your wages can't keep up with inflation. You must settle for less.
And who wants their children to be worse off than they are themselves? But the reason I agree with Joe on something I think is quite significant, that mortgages are going up around the world, right, in this current financial situation. But it hurts more here than in many other countries because we have such a perversely distorted environment in which we are almost uniquely focused on home ownership and we don't let people build more homes. Right? So supply has been strangled systematically. Governments of all kinds, not a fault on left or right, it's a fault of everybody, has strangled at local and national level the ability to build more homes at a time when we've got a really weak rental market and we encourage people more than ever to own their own home. It's perverse. Right, so in the economy that is more homeowner-driven than any other in Europe, basically,
it's bonkers.
We've strangled supply.
And we've got, if you go to any European city, nearly everybody, or any European country, most people rent.
Rent at reasonable levels.
And they rent at reasonable levels and they've got a security of tenure and, they can rent a flat above or apartment above a shop or something and they live a life that is so different to us where it's all about, you've got to have a house, you've got to have a garden, you've got to have this, that and the other. Whereas actually you can have a perfectly acceptable, and many, many people do, and in fact some would argue a better quality of life if you're not absolutely hamstrung with this desire and this nonsense that, you're expected to pay so much money in rent to a private landlord, but you can't get a mortgage, even though the mortgage would be less, or might have been less, than the rent.
Yeah, and there's lots of talks about changing some of those things so that, for example, when you want to apply for mortgages, your rental history would be taken into account when it comes to affordability. And I'm passionate, obviously I'm a northerner, so I'm passionate about levelling up. But there is a small part of me just thinks, be careful what you wish for, because I split my time Hull and London, and the disparity is vast. Obviously, we all know this, hence the agenda. But one of the things that is vast is the cost of things. So it is so much cheaper for everything. If I want to re-heel my shoes, there's no way I would do it in London. I would do it in Hull. It's a fraction of the cost. And it's kind of, you've got to be a little bit careful as a northerner when we're talking about levelling up, because yes, we want the levelling up of the good opportunities, but I would suggest that you don't want the levelling up of the extortionate house prices, the extortionate cost of everything, and the ridiculous, like the state of what you can rent in London, the extortionate prices that they charge you for, you know, shoeboxes.
Yeah. But I mean, when we were in Kent last week, in Deal, you know, former mining area, but also a lovely seaside town and very popular with visitors, and, you know, much to offer, as you know. I don't know how much time you got to see there. But the difference, I mean, the disparity between life expectancy, between people who are living 10 miles apart, or 15 miles apart, is absolutely ridiculous. And that's in one county, you know, and people think, oh, it's really wealthy, it's really well off. Parts of it are, but there are very few jobs. Unemployment's very high because there is not very much around. And so I think, you know, it's not just north and south. London is a magnet and a complete distorter.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But, you know, look at the cities like Manchester and Bristol, and Birmingham and Nottingham and, you know, and Newcastle. There's places where... And Leeds. Yeah.
Love Leeds.
And, you know, and Scotland, of course. But we've got to try and change things a little bit. And I'm not for 1 minute saying we should make do with less, but I think we need to be less greedy. And that's a bit of a different thing.
Interesting.
Less greedy. Are you greedy out there? Do you feel greedy? Do you think, actually, if I want a coffee and a bun on my way to work, that's just like my luxury? I've earned that. Christina says, we need a change of mindset. What used to be luxuries, Michelle, are now regarded as essentials. She says there's this constant expectation of growth, and it's that which is destroying the planet.
And this sense that, you know, I deserve it. You know, and part of it's advertising. You have this because you deserve it. You know, you go to the supermarket and you buy a ready meal, and it's described like it would be on a menu in a restaurant. Well, I mean, that's just ludicrous because it's still mainly full of processed nonsense.
Well, there you go. Tell me your thoughts on all of that. Going to take a quick break. When I come back, I want to talk to you about drug addiction. What is the answer to this? We all know it's a problem, right? So how do we fix it? Tell me, and I'll see you in 2.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, right through with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Also keeping me company, Alex Dean is the author, political consultant and member of the Tory party and former Lib Dem advisor and political commentator Joe Phillips. Good evening to all of you guys. Ian says, Michelle, there is no such thing as levelling up. There is just levelling. And as we have no money, how do we level up the poorest if we try levelling down the richest? That's quite an interesting point. How do you actually achieve levelling up? I clearly think no one's got the answer, or else we perhaps would have done it by now.
There was quite a good white paper produced by Michael Gove, actually.
Was there?
Remember him?
I do remember him. I do remember.
Extremely effective minister, whatever you think of him.
Yeah, no, a brilliant political operator, a brilliant politician.
Cynthia says, if the Prime Minister is willing to lower his standard of living to my OAP level of living, then yes, we can level up. I found you, by the way. I was asking, were there any Tory party members out there that are happy with Rishi? I found you. Christine says, yes, congrats, Rishi. Tonight, I feel safer. Denise says, I'm a Tory member and I'm glad it didn't go to the members. We need stability and Rishi is the right person to guide the way. And Vaughan says, I think Rishi will be a great PM. Let's all hope so, because, as I was just saying, it's not just about the Tory party, it's about all of our best interests. We all need a premiership to work right now and steady the ship and bring some calmness, don't we, to this country? That is what we've been lacking. Right, let's talk drugs, shall we? A Middlesbrough drug clinic that provided medical-grade heroin to addicts has closed. The city has one of the worst drug death rates in this country, and the centre provided heroin under medical supervision in order to keep addicts out of crime and try and wean them off the drug. The local Labour MP there says it's a very bad day for Middlesbrough. Alex Dean, where do you stand on they're called drug consumption rooms, where, as I've just been describing, you'll be supervised, basically, when you receive your heroin. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I'm familiar with them. Look, it's an increasingly antique experience, but having both prosecuted and defended drug offences, including Class A intent to supply, I do have a view on it, which is, in this country, once upon a time, we used to treat addiction of even very serious drugs like heroin as a medical problem to be addressed and for somebody to be looked after first and foremost. And that was when we had a very small number of people who had heroin addiction. And the secret truth of that is that people could live productive lives for years whilst on a stable and gradually reducing amount of heroin given to them by the state. And the reason that we changed paths on that was that there was an explosion in supply. And people became increasingly professional, adept and numerous in supplying drugs. And that completely changed our approach because you could no longer control the supply to individuals and control a relatively small number of addicts. And to me, clearly the problem in the end is that we've almost completely lost control of seeking to enforce the law on those who supply drugs. And the trouble for clinics like this is that when you have an addiction, you are known to your supplier circles and you will be encouraged, once you've had your dose from the clinic, to go and get some more somewhere else. That's in the end, I'm afraid, whilst the country is awash with the supply of illegal drugs, these clinics are really going to be up against it.
Yeah, a lot of these dealers, they're like vultures. They're like, yeah, anyway, Joe.
No, I mean, I think this is, it's a very, very small project, but they have been doing it in Scotland for a number of years now. And as Alex was sort of explaining there, people are getting medical-grade heroin, diamorphine, which, I have seen it in chemists. People come in and they'll get their methadone or whatever it is, and they'll knock it back and off they'll go. So it's not... but the fact that it was under medical supervision, so it's not cut with rat poison.
Yeah.
The fact that there was some sort of support. And there was a research by Teesside University. They only looked at 14 participants, which is admittedly very small. But these were people who were taking street heroin every day, but most were then abstinent for large periods of time, and 80% of tests of traces for street heroin were negative. And they cost the state £4.3 million, including police and criminal justice costs and cost to victim, and offending reduced by 60%. So this is one of those really key things and the argument is about who should pay for it. It's been funded by the Home Office. It's been supported by the Home Office, but the local police and crime commissioner says it should come out of health budget rather than crime budget. And I think this is where the problem happens so often. When you've got cash-strapped local authorities, they're trying desperately to put the money from a different budget, and this is clearly something that crosses health, social and crime and disorder. And unless you can bring those things together, it's very difficult. That you're always going to have these arguments,
And I think you've got to the heart of it, both of you. Are these drug addicts? Is it a matter of health, or is it a matter of criminality?
Sure. But look, drug addiction causes a remarkable percentage of crime in this country, as in remarkably high. Whether it be committing acquisitive crimes to get money to pay for them, or violence for those who haven't paid, or between dealers, it causes a huge amount of crime. But I'm on one view, you can read this and you can see people doing their very best in a really challenged community and understand their frustration. You can understand the Police and Crime Commission saying these are people who aren't committing crimes. They should be held by from the health, because it's going to be a long-term thing as well. This should be on the healthcare. Yeah. I understand that if that's your job and your job is to be the Police and Crime Commissioner, I can understand why that's your perspective. And you can understand too people looking at this and saying, well, this level of remission and this level of people not committing offences, offending being down 60%.
That's a lot.
Still, well, yeah, sure, but it still means 2 out of 5 people still going on committing offences. And if you've got the not taking street heroin down 80%, it means 1 in 5 is still promptly going out and taking some heroin somewhere else. Now, I'm not sceptical or cynical about those things, but those are the sorts of allegations people might level at a scheme like this. If it were up to me, I would have liked to have kept running, but I understand the challenges that the people have made this decision.
Yeah, Samantha's been in touch saying, isn't it funny, Michelle, we'll spend thousands of pounds on addicts and treat them over and over again for a self-inflicted condition. And yet other people with conditions they don't have any control over, things like dementia, have their hard-earned money taken off them to pay for their treatment. And I guess what I'd ask you there is, do you see the addiction as a choice? Because I agree that first use of a drug, it's a choice, isn't it? Often it's a conscious choice as well. But I would probably push back against the sentiment that being addicted to something is a choice. Some of you are saying, I've lost your name now, but you've just emailed in saying, oh, here we are, Bernard, you should put these drug addicts into compulsory cold turkey accommodation instead of all of this long wasting time and money treatment.
But how much would that cost, Bernard? Put them into cold turkey and then what? Chuck them out on the street?
And in theory, prison is cold turkey.
Yes, exactly.
But that really hasn't worked out very well.
And, if somebody can have their life turned around and there's no reason to think that they can't with support, then actually they become useful members of society. And very, very often, it's the same as people who renounce violence. They become quite useful mentors and role models for other people. I mean, I completely agree with the point about dementia. It is utterly ludicrous. But again, this comes back to the thing that, if you've got a medical condition that needs nursing treatment like cancer, you will have your care funded. If you've got something like dementia or Alzheimer's, you won't. So again, you
lack
go
of
around
consistency.
and it's this going round in circles. And people trying to balance the books. And what I think has happened is that we've got into the point where we can't say, come on, let's put our heads together and solve this problem.
Put our heads together and solve the issues. That would be a good mantra going forward for lots of things. John says, Michelle, my daughter has been a heroin addict for 25 years. He says the police know who the dealers are in the town she lives in and do nothing. John, I'm very sorry to hear that, because if your child is a heroin addict, often it doesn't just affect the child, it affects the whole family and then some. So I'm very sorry to hear that, and I hope she gets help and well soon. But that is all we've got time for. Thank you very much, Joe and Alex, for your opinions. And also to you at home as well for your interaction. I love it. Have yourself a fantastic evening. I'll see you tomorrow, but do not go anywhere, because up next is Nigel Farage. Nigel, good evening. What have you got for us?
Michelle, thank you. Good evening. Yeah, well, Boris dropped out, so it's a coronation. Yes, Rishi Sunak becomes our Prime Minister tomorrow, and he's well educated, he is clever, he did ever so well at Goldman Sachs, he's very rich, but can he connect with the working classes? Can he connect with those Red Wall voters, or is it goodbye, Red Wall, goodbye, Conservative government? Because that's what I think the outcome will be. Join me for all of that and more. First, though, let's get the all-important weather.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Next few days stays very similar. Further sunny spells, scattered showers and exceptionally mild for the time of year too. Looking at the pressure pattern, well, very similar to what it has been. Low pressure remains in charge, sat just to the west of the UK, meaning strongest winds, outbreaks of rain, more likely in the west, some drier interludes, particularly in the east. Through the rest of Monday into the early hours of Tuesday morning, there will be a few showers around, though most places will stay dry and we'll see plenty of clear spells developing. Under these clear spells, it will start to turn a little chillier than it has done of late, temperatures dipping into single figures. But that means quite a dry start, a bright start to the day on Tuesday morning, plenty